All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. You are in the Leadership in the Moment, and I'm Tim Huff. And we're going to be talking today about core values. We've been talking recently about authentic leadership and some of the dimensions of authentic leadership that are truly important. First, we've talked about a purpose-based leadership approach, and we talked with Richard Hicks from Inspired EDU. And we've talked about a passion-based leadership approach, and we talked with Dolores Mears from Hensel Phelps. Today, we're going to be talking about the third dimension of authentic leadership that I think is really important, and that is core values. So core values, what are core values? They're somebody's highest convictions. They're deeply held beliefs and fundamental driving forces that truly help represent what a person stands for in the world. They are almost as immovable as somebody's personality. They're that important to a person. So I'd like to talk a little bit about what values are and what they are not, because there's a lot of misconceptions about what values truly are and how important they are in being an authentic person and an authentic leader. So first off, what values are? First off, they're values that can be foundations and as a guide to help drive behavior and to help drive decisions. Whether we know it or not, whether we like it or not, our core values truly help define the way that we make decisions in almost every aspect of our daily lives. They also help clarify who we are as a person. You know, I mentioned that they're very close to like your personality and how a personality helps define a person. Well, values are almost as important as that. They truly help clarify who we are and the kinds of things that are truly important to us. And I mentioned that they rarely change. You know, values can change just like a personality can change, but they are so ingrained in defining who we are that they really don't change all that much. It takes a very long time and a lot of concerted effort, conscious effort, to make a change to a value. And a lot of times they really aren't obvious. You know, if I were to ask you, what are your top 4 or 5 values? You may have to think about that a lot of times, and you may have to really do a lot of core introspection to understand this is what truly is important to me. I may think it's this, but it truly is that. So let's talk a little bit about what values are not. First off, they are not priorities. A lot of people may think, okay, I spend a lot of time doing this, or I really like doing this, and I prioritize this in my life. Well, that may be good, but they're not values. Values are helping to define the behaviors and the decisioning that help go into those priorities, but your priorities are not your values. They're also not operating norms. Just because you happen to have a habit of doing something or you've intentionally defined a certain behavior as part of how you're going about your daily life in your personal life or your professional life, that does not mean that it's a value for you. They're also not aspirational. You know, not too long ago, I really thought that humility was one of my values, and I put that on my list and said that's something that I think of very as something that's very core to who I am. But over time, I recognized that I have got a lot of work to do in that area. So I define that now as an aspirational value. I'm working towards being a more humble person and incorporating that as part of who I am as a person. But I've got a lot of work to do. Therefore, I define that not as a value, but as an aspirational value. They're also not competencies or strengths. Just because you happen to be good at something doesn't mean that it's part of your values. You may have a strength in, you know, technology, programming, or an athletic competency. That does not mean that it's a value for you. It may be a priority, it may be a strength, not a value. They're also not given to you by your company. I chuckle at this sometimes because I've been fortunate enough to work with some great companies with some great values, but I've been very clear about the fact that those company values are not my values. And a lot of people may misinterpret when a company says these are what's important to us and you have to show up and live by these values every single day, which is perfectly fine. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they are your values. You need to be very intentional about that. And they are not adjustable to circumstances. You may find yourself in a professional setting and a personal setting. You are still that same person, regardless of your circumstance, and your values are still defining who you are and how you're making up your decisions and how you're making up your behaviors in a given time. And they're not adjustable to those circumstances. So I think it's a really interesting thing to do sometimes, to go through that exercise of understanding what your values are, because it'll truly help you in your authentic journey in being a great leader and a great human being. So I hope this has been helpful, and we'll stay tuned for next time for Leadership in the Moment.